Clock. I think we will get going. You all set, Alex?
I am all set.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. This is Greg Stoliti with Next Phase Rugby. Thank you all for joining tonight. Big thank you also to USA Youth and High School Rugby for inviting us to host this webinar. Before we jump in, just kind of want to talk quickly about why we're here. We know many players, parents are still new to the sport of rugby, and that number is growing every day. Maybe some of you do have rugby experience, but when it comes to college rugby, it's still a bit confusing. The different governing bodies, the different types of teams, different divisions, a lot to take in. Maybe your son or daughter recently came home from practice and said, "I want to play rugby in college," and now you're wondering what's next. So this presentation is really for you. We're going to just give a straightforward overview of the college rugby landscape in the U.S. Not about specific schools, but we might use some as examples, but it's more for helping you understand the structure and what your options are. So let's go into the agenda. We'll do some quick introductions. Then we'll talk about the governing bodies and the competitions. We'll talk about the different types of college rugby programs. Talk about some financial incentives. And then finally, we'll talk about finding the right fit. What we're going to do, we're going to pause after certain sections to take questions in the chat. So the chat's going to be monitored throughout. So please, feel free as we're going along to drop questions into the chat. Okay, so let's get into introductions. So Next Phase Rugby, we launched in May of 2021. Can't believe it's been almost 4 years now. We're a web-based platform and an app that connects high school rugby players in the U.S. with collegiate rugby programs. Since we started, we've grown to thousands of registered athletes and now work with over 450 or so rugby programs across all divisions for both men and women. Again, I'm Greg Stoliti, co-founder and president of Next Phase Rugby. I've been involved with rugby for over 30 years now as a player, coach, administrator. I played college rugby, men's club rugby. Even spent 13 years on the USA Rugby League team. I'm also a co-founder of Berks County Rugby in Pennsylvania, which I started in 2016 after my two kids, they were 5th and 7th grade at the time, told me they wanted to play rugby. So today they're both playing in college. Well, actually, one son, James, just graduated from Mount St. Mary's in Maryland. And my other son, Jake, is wrapping up his sophomore year at Kutztown University. And then last week, my 10-year-old daughter said to me, she finally agreed that she's going to give rugby a try. So I'm pretty excited about that. So now I'll pass it over to you, Alex.
Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm Alex Goff. I'm also a co-founder of Next Phase Rugby. Started with Greg at the beginning. I'm a journalist and I cover high school and college rugby, and I've been doing that in my present form with Goff Rugby Report since 2014, but I've been in the rugby journalism business for about 30 years. And I also do a little bit of coaching on the side, so I coach in the high school level as well. So, yeah.
Excellent. And we're also excited to have a special guest with us tonight. Someone who can give us kind of the coach's perspective. So we're going to welcome Sam Inari, head coach of the two-time NCR Division I AA national champion, University of Kentucky Wildcats. Welcome, Sam.
Man, what an introduction. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Just so that everyone else on the call knows, yes, I'm with the University of Kentucky, but I also have experience in both governing bodies. Well, technically 3 governing bodies with the women in NIRA, as well as USA, NCR, and high school and high performance. So, not here to talk about say what's good, what's not, just kind of give a coach's perspective on how to get your players, your children recruited.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So let's first we'll talk about the governing bodies in college. So there are 3 main organizations that you need to know. First is College Rugby Association of America, or CRA. Next is National Collegiate Rugby, otherwise known as NCR. And finally, National Intercollegiate Rugby Association, or NIRA, which is, this one's really specific to women's NCAA. So each of these runs their own competition, own championship. So we're going to take a closer look at each of them. So Alex, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, CRAA, College Rugby Association of America, runs a number of different levels of competition. They are specifically directly aligned with USA Rugby at your CRAA college, and your players are members of USA Rugby. They run the D1A, which is the very highest level of college rugby, and they also have other divisions. They have a D1AA, which differs from NCR mostly along seasonality lines when they play, and they have some other divisions as well. They had a women's D1A / used to be called D1 Elite. It's not very big, very high level, but not very many schools in that. And then a D1 competition that I would say is not huge, but has gotten much better out of COVID in the last couple of years. So they have their championships in the spring. They have a sevens tournament as well. Next week, in fact, the D1AA men have a sevens tournament this coming weekend. But they wrap up everything in this 15 style in the spring.
Awesome. Next is NCR, or National Collegiate Rugby. So NCR evolved from the National Small College Rugby Organization, otherwise known as NSCRO. It was founded back in 2007, and originally focused on supporting small college rugby programs. But since then, NCR has grown to serve collegiate rugby programs of all sizes for both men and women. Overview of their competitions: their men's 15 championships, so D1, D1AA, D2, D3. They're all played in the fall. And as well as the women's 15s championship for the D1, D2, and D3. They also run the Collegiate Rugby Championship, otherwise known as the CRCs. Very popular sevens tournament for both men and women, which is held in the spring. In addition, they also do 15s All-Star Championships. Those are held in December for men and women. One important note, paying NCR dues does not make you a member of USA Rugby, but for some teams, they do play against USA Rugby member teams. So they also do pay dues to USA Rugby. So it all depends on the team. Then let's take a look at NIRA.
All right. Well, NIRA, National Intercollegiate Rugby Association, this is for the women's NCAA initiative. Rugby is an NCAA sport, but it's an emerging sport. What that basically means is the NCAA doesn't really pay for anything. You have to get to a certain number of teams to get them to jump in and switch you from emerging to a full NCAA sport. They're not quite there yet. They've got a couple dozen teams playing. They have Division I, Division II, and Division III. And frankly, the Division II and Division III are not very big. And there's also sort of development teams there that are building. The Division I league is quite robust. There are 11 teams in there, and these are programs such as service academies, Army and Navy, Ivy League teams such as Dartmouth and Harvard and Brown, and then other well-respected universities, Sacred Heart, Quinnipiac, Long Island University, things like that. So it's a really great opportunity for women in there. They are fully supported programs within there, paid coaches, things paid for, things like that, assistance in getting you into the school, all that stuff. The key thing to remember, though, when you're being recruited is that they have much stricter rules about being recruited. Like if you're younger than a junior, they can't talk to you. And that's something that club teams and elevated club teams can do whenever they want. So you know, somebody might think, well, does this coach at Sacred Heart care about me, want me? Well, there are certain times when they're allowed to talk to you and certain times when they're not allowed to talk to you. So you just have to be aware of that.
Exactly. So Sam, you've been a part of, like you said, a lot of these different programs, which cover all the, different organizations. What's your perspective on them?
So it all comes down to best fit for you, but like also resource allocation, right? So since, as you said, NCR started with small schools, there's a lot of small schools and a lot of them are going to be school funded. Now, does that mean that they have infinite resources? They'll be first to tell you no, and many of you have seen articles on Alex's website about a couple schools in the 2024-2025 school year, that have closed, right? NYRA is essentially, that is where the best women's players play. In the NYRA D1 in particular, with a couple teams moving from D1 Elite over. The best men's teams, and even though I'm not, even though I'm an NCR champion and all that, like the best men's teams are in RCRAA, and the probably top 5 teams. Probably Brown and NCR could probably compete in that, but that's probably, it just is what it is. And then the rest of it, anything below those top 5 teams, for on the men's side, it really comes down to a couple things of best fit. Do you want big state school, degree, that type of environment? Do you want rugby to be your entire life and entire identity in college, which that's going to gear towards the smaller full varsity programs? All have their merits, all produce really good rugby, all produce professionals, all have produced Eagles, and at all levels. But you have to look at, what do you really want your life to look like when you're in college, as a college student?
Yep. Okay. Let's take a look. Alex, why don't you run through, here's some of the numbers for the different organizations.
Yeah, so what you're going to see, talk about these organizations, first of all, NYRA, we've got 25 teams, so that's not a lot, right? But as Sam pointed out, almost all the best teams, best players are in these programs, and Lindenwood University, which was a CRAA D1A team, has become full NCAA program and is moving into NYRA this fall. So that's another move forward. That's the defending D1A champion is now moving into NYRA as well. So very high level, just not a lot of teams. At the same time, a really good opportunity for good students who are, really love their rugby. You'll see that NCR has got the volume. Hands down, they've got the volume in terms of number of teams involved. These are all different kinds, but you'll see very heavily, very strongly on the Division 3, which is the old small college, and then the Division 2. And if you look at the numbers for men and women there, we're talking about, what's that, 2, 3, 46, 4, 520 teams. Is that right? Is that right? 260? Yeah. About 520 teams added, men and women, in Division 2 and Division 3. That is a huge part of what they do. So when people ask, I got that question today, do you think I could play college rugby? It's like, of course you can. Question is, what level? And then you move up, you'll see NCR D1 is, I would say, like, if you can sort of picture it, D1A is the highest level, but NCR D1 overlaps there. So the best NCR D1 teams are up there if we were to merge those rankings, are up there as well. And then D1 AA would be far less likely to be a school-supported program, much more likely to be a club, an elevated club, a well-funded club, funded by the alumni, things like that.
Excellent. Yeah, so that's actually a good segue into the types of rugby programs out there. This is another confusing one, because we have anything from NCAA down to club and in between. So let's talk about those a little bit.
Club teams. This is your standard thing. This is what people, a lot of times, parents, if you knew anybody on the rugby team, you played rugby, chances are you were on a club team. This is just, it's run by rec sports. Very often the university will only talk to the students who run it. They won't talk to the coaches. Even if they employ a coach, it's actually the students who interact with the school. As they have to work to get practice time along with other club sports, and then they go and they play. They're essentially funded by the players, maybe a little bit by the alumni or something like that, maybe some sponsorships, things like that. This is the vast majority of Division 2 and Division 3 teams.
Yep. And then the next one is what we call like an elevated club. So officially, these programs are still considered club teams by the universities. However, they operate more like varsity-like features or a varsity program because of a few factors. Maybe they have a strong history. They've been very consistent on-field success, significant alumni support, and because of these, different things, maybe they can hire a paid coach, or they have a dedicated rugby field, get some funding for travel, and in some cases maybe even offer scholarship money. So actually, if you're on the Next Phase platform, you can actually search for these types of programs. Let me pull that up here. So you can actually, by filter, search for an elevated club. And now you're going to see all the different universities that show up as an elevated club. And you see right here, University of Kentucky. So Sam, you guys are an elevated club. What's that like for you guys?
Yeah, so when it comes to relationship with the school, it's interesting, right? Officially on the school website, we're going to be listed as a club, same as any other student organization. In practice, elevated clubs such as mine get some priority, get some say so. I have a direct line of contact with the head of direct sports. I've emailed the president. I've sat down with athletics higher ups, right? So like when things come up and recognition is needed, those lines of communication are there. I'm not going to be running to them with every little thing, because that's how you burn a bridge pretty quickly, right? But it's just one of those things where when something needs to happen, we can make it happen. We have that relationship with the school. There are levels to elevated club, right? For a long time, well, we all know Cal Berkeley, right, as a rugby program. For a long time, they were an elevated club. They were able to essentially buy their varsity status, right? If you were to think of another elevated club, which is under athletics, but is the definition of an elevated club, would be like a Penn State, where they're in the athletics program, but they have to pay. But the alumni have to pay for everything that they want to use for at the school, which is why they might not get the full sponsored kit. They might not get these things. They're going to be still practicing on a similar field to similar multi-sport fields, right? But in general, elevated clubs, we have very good funding from alumni, access to higher decision makers within the school, and we're seen as a higher tier of student organization because we're just so much more organized. For example, I'm blessed that this is my full-time job, right? This is the only thing I do is rugby. That's probably the first thing that would separate a regular club to an elevated club is, do they employ their coach full-time?
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, you can see some of the men's clubs men's teams that showed up on the elevated club. And if we did the same thing for women's, you would see teams like Fairfield University or Grand Canyon University show up, or UC Santa Cruz, those types of programs. Next one that we'll talk about, Alex, tell us about the non-varsity athletic department supported.
So this is one more step up, where the university does support it and treats it like a varsity program in many ways, but they don't list them as a varsity program. And one of the main reasons there is Title IX. So they don't need to have another full contact 50-person male sport on their rolls, on their Title IX compliance, because that hurts their viability on that. So you will see a program such as Davenport University. Their women's team is a varsity program. The men's team is under non-varsity sports. Lindenwood University, women's team is varsity. Men's team is under student life sports, but they're treated pretty much the same way in many ways. There might be a little bit of an advantage for the quote-unquote varsity sport, but really they've got a lot of the same benefits. You might look at BYU has sort of a unique situation. They're called club sports, but their definition of club sports is much more elevated and gets funding from the university. There are only a few club sports at BYU. Otherwise, they'd call them extramural sports or something like that. So that I would categorize as a non-varsity athletics department supported program as well. So just because it's not varsity doesn't mean the school isn't there behind them.
Yep. So the next one we'll go to is varsity. So this is probably, I would say, the fastest growing segment in college rugby. They're part of the school's athletic department. Some of the programs that have been around for a long time, but a lot of them are relatively new, and they're using rugby really to grow the diversity of the student body. And because they're fully supported typically by the athletic department, they usually have access to a lot more resources. They may have athletic trainers and training rooms, dedicated weight room times for the athletes, larger travel budgets, maybe even a laundry service or, uniforms and other athletic gear provided to the athletes. Sometimes they'll have early access to class scheduling or early access to dorms or even an athlete dorm that they're living in. And again, if you are on the Next Phase Rugby app and you're searching, by program type, and you put in varsity, you're going to see teams on the women's side, like Alex had said, Davenport or St. Bonaventure, Adrian, Alfred University. And then on the men's side, you'll find schools like Mount St. Mary's or Wheeling or Iowa Central Community College, Marion University, or, Army, West Point. So a lot of different schools are on varsity status. And then the final one is NCAA.
Yeah, we touched on this. These are NCAA programs. They follow NCAA rules. They have a straight up that they're supported by the university. And the thing is, as Sam pointed out, buying your status. That's pretty standard here. There's an endowment that helps with these programs. That's kind of how it does it. It's not like schools just sort of check a box and say, okay, you're varsity now. There's usually a financial situation involved there, but they are treated just like any other NCAA sport within that school, even though it's an emerging sport. Greg, we've got a couple of questions that sort of fit here. I was going to read them out. Two of them sort of touch on the same topic, and you can answer this, but the one is, do you have a breakdown of the schools and the type of programs at each and in this presentation? And the other one is, do you have to register for the website to find the breakdown of the schools? And so you can answer that, I guess.
Yeah, so I don't have the breakdown, but that is something I can easily put together. So when I do send out the presentation, I can break it down by the number of each one that we have. As far as access to Next Phase, so for athletes, they can create a free or premium profile. So if they create a free one, you're going to be able to access and still search and do the same search functionality that I just showed you before. So you are able to go on and then, see that breakdown and go through the different schools and based on, how they are as far as varsity or what type of program they are.
So you're downloading the app for your phone, and then you are registering on the website Next Phase Rugby.
Correct.
So you can use the app, and then the app operates for you. So that's the way you can either you can refine your searches based on all of that. Excellent question here, right? Only women rugby programs have scholarships. The answer to that is no, and I think we're touching on scholarships in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Absolutely.
Right, but
which of these programs recruit? We have 450 schools on the platform, so they are on their recruiting. So all of them are recruiting. It's just it differs on maybe what they have to offer and those types of things. But we're going to get into that. We're finding the right fit. I mean, yes, getting recruited is great, but it's also finding the right fit, and I think we're going to touch on that later on. How do you get noticed if you don't have many matches or tournaments? Good question.
Can I answer?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So, rugby is still a fairly emerging sport in the United States. Yes, everyone here, we're locked in. We love the sport, and it's very big to us, but the greater U.S. public may not, right? Lots of programs are starting to have these full-time coaches, myself included, varsity programs, but there are only so many eyes right? We don't have most teams do not have, or I'm going to be bold and say there's no rugby team that has the same level of recruiting budget as a D1 NCAA D1 football team has, right? So at this scale, recruiting is a two-way street, right? It doesn't matter if it's, perfect VO or nationals or, high camera angles. A very simple video, like phone video sent out, an email to a coach that you're interested in, helps immensely. Next Phase Rugby has been a huge tool for me personally, and then social media as well. It might feel weird to reach out to coaches, but there are only so many hours and only so many eyes, and there are a lot of players who want to play. That being said, I would say send out if coaches aren't reaching out to you, reach out to the coaches at the schools that you are interested in as a recruit, right? If rugby is the number one priority, then that's going to lead you down a certain path. If rugby is going to be a high priority, but not your whole life, then that is going to lead you down a certain path. If rugby is going to be a fun hobby that you do, and maybe it's you socialize with friends and rugby is something you do on the side, and that's going to lead you down a very different path. But at the end of the day, I would say 100% of clubs are recruiting. Some do it locally, some do it regionally, some do it nationally, and it has to be a two-way street so that recruits find the right fit and that coaches and programs find the right fit, because the last thing a coach wants is for someone to be frustrated with their final decision, and school ain't cheap, so you better be there for a reason.
Excellent. Thanks,
There's
Sam.
another question, Sam, I think you might be able to address here, and it's how do we handle nominal or lack of media, i.e. film, to share with clubs or coaches?
Question.
And so that's, and I would say, first of all, there's the personal thing. You can make your profile, say your Next Phase Rugby profile, and you can talk about your grades and your interests and your the games you play and the positions you play, those, and how tall you are and how much you weigh and all those things. You can talk about all of that without film, right?
Mm-hmm. Another really good way for it is, like Alex said, advocate for yourself, but also have your coach advocate for you, right? If your coach isn't willing to advocate for you, you might have to do a little bit of self-reflection, a little bit of self-reflection on where you need to improve. It doesn't have to be, like I said, perfect. It could be mom on the sideline with their phone. Don't be afraid to ask the opposing team. Let's say another high school club might have a little bit more resources, right? Let's say you're a public school team playing against more private school, a Jesuit type school that might have a little bit more direct funding for their school program. Ask them. Any coach, any program worth their salt wants the sport to grow in their region, so they're going to be more than willing to share that film. But the biggest thing is to advocate for yourself, right? Reach out. It's okay if there's not going to be film. Reach out to the coach. Say, hey, I'm interested. Here are my measurements. Here are my numbers. Here are my positions. I'm working on getting film. I will have film for you by X date, and then follow through.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, I mean, I'm a high school coach, and we're a club team. We don't have a ton of resources, so we don't film every game. But all of our opposition, for the most part, does. We're playing a lot of private schools. They have the Vail cameras up. After every game, I ask for them to share it so I can give it to my kids so they can get highlights of themselves. I've also had times where I said, okay, I have a fly half, and I say, let's film drills after practice. He's passing left 10 times, passing right 10 times, kicking, left, kicking down the middle, kicking to the right side of the field, filming all these different things and posting those online as well. So, and each position has a lot of specific things that you can film, at least just to put onto there. And so coaches can see it.
Right. There are a couple more questions, but Greg, maybe we move on. We can grab those as we go.
Yep. Real quick, I just saw, are there opportunities for international students in Canada? Absolutely. We have Canadian students on the app, and they're getting recruited same way as U.S. players. And now we're going to go into financial incentives. So let's start with merit scholarships. And these are based on things like your GPA, test scores, even character-based achievements like leadership or community service, other extracurriculars, whatever they may be. Yeah, in many cases, the merit scholarships are larger than you'll get from a rugby scholarship. And that's going to be a critical piece to your total financial aid package. Another thing to keep in mind, if you are a strong student that qualifies for merit, like merit aid, or it will make it easier for rugby programs to find additional support for you. And Sam, I don't know if you can, maybe speak to that, where if you have somebody coming in who meets some of these higher standards, how it helps you, get them in, and maybe even find additional grants or whatever it may be.
The biggest thing that high school students need to know is that your high school GPA equals dollars for college, right? That's all colleges. I can't speak to what every college number, what that number is. But let's say, for example, you have a 3.8 and a decent ACT or a decent SAT coming to Kentucky. That's like, it's about 16 grand off the top. That's half off of tuition, right? That scales down for, that's going to scale down to a certain amount. The different amounts are going to be different per school. What that also does is, when it comes to recruitment, coaches don't want headaches, right? So what that means is, if you are a high performing academically, or finish strong academically in high school, that shows that you're going to be motivated. And if you have a bad semester in college, it's going to be a mistake and not a habit, which then will keep you available for longer. And then, depending on the relationship with the school, certain programs, elevated clubs or varsity, can speak directly to admissions, can speak directly to financial aid, can guide you in a way. At smaller schools, for example, at an Adrian, they have a special fund set aside that's not for athletic scholarship. It's still merit-based scholarship. And recruit athletes have to meet certain things, but it's a fund to add a little bit extra, because they're a private institution that's a little bit more expensive. Then, with me, I have a very good personal relationship with the admissions office, and so it's more of an informal thing where I can move people's applications to the top of the piles. Whereas, let's say a Harvard men's and women's, or a Brown men's and women's, they have even though the men's is a club program, they have a much more formal type of relationship with the school and with admissions, and they get actual spots to help students get in. Help students get in and find that money, because I think Brown is something silly like $90,000 a year to go to. So I don't think very few people are actually paying that full amount. But grades equal dollars and opportunity. That's the biggest takeaway that you need to have with this.
Absolutely. Thank you. Next one, we'll touch on athletic scholarships, and these are very straightforward. This is scholarships based on your rugby talent. So, but to be honest, full rugby scholarships are very, very rare. Most athletic scholarships are going to be anywhere from a few $100s to a few $1,000s, or several thousands of dollars. So that's why, to piggyback again on what Sam said, we tell our players, focus on your academics and character, because those opportunities, that will open more doors for you than athletic talent alone.
Can I say something about?
Oh yeah.
Sorry, Kat.
Yep.
So I coached at a small varsity program in the Northeast, and I want to say this: with athletic scholarship, while they are rare, they do get put out. They do get put out there, and it's possible. The expectation is different if you are on an athletic scholarship, in terms of availability, in terms of performance. That is money that's not based on previous work and just being a good person, a good student. It is money that is attached to how much you produce, right? If you get injured, they're not going to take it away, because morally it's the right thing and legally they can't. But if you become a perceived cancer to a team, the athletic scholarship can be taken away, right? While it's a huge gift and it's a huge opportunity, those of you who are lucky enough to get it, just know that there are very high expectations, not just coming out of high school, but all the way through, that come with an athletic scholarship, regardless of sport, but in particular rugby, because they're so rare.
Yeah. And I can speak to experience with both my kids playing in college, both, one at varsity, one at elevated club, both did receive money, different amounts for both of them, not a large amount, but one had opportunity to keep increasing it by, make the 23, make the starting 15 and be able to, build on that. So it is there. But I can also tell you the one who got more money in athletics scholarships got significantly more in merit scholarships just because of his GPA. And it actually opened the door for them to find other things for him as well. Next one, Alex, alternative scholarships. This is a good one.
Yeah, so this is where you talk about the elevated club. You've got groups of alumni who produce scholarships that will be very often for existing players on a college program rather than incoming players. But there are other organizations as well. There's a foundation here where I'm based in Ohio called the 1964 Foundation, but broader U.S. Rugby Foundation has a bunch of scholarships that they give out. And this is such a loaded word, and Sam, you can talk to it too. A scholarship can be $250, or it could be 10,000. So, just because the word scholarship is out there doesn't mean that it's necessarily giving you a lot of money. Most of these things are more in the $1,000, $1,500 range. But Sam, I know you have alumni scholarships at your program.
Yeah, so we use ours as a kind of job training. As anyone who's applied for a job knows, that writing a cover letter is the worst possible thing to do in employment. Nobody likes it. I don't think anybody reads it, but still part of it. So we use that as practice. And we have, every club's going to have different hurdles that they have to get through. For us, it's be a good steward of the club, which means volunteering, good grades, all the off-field stuff, but also having being a really good student, having a 3.0 in college, and then be nominated by a peer, and then it goes from there. We give away 10 scholarships over the course of the year. They range from like $1,250 to $3,000 a semester, but they don't renew, so you have to apply for every single one. With elevated clubs, where it's all, as we'll say, alternative scholarships, sometimes for the right player in the right situation with the right amount of need, a mystery donor will show up, right? Which is kind of the wild west of college rugby right now, which it's to its benefit and to its detriment. Sometimes, it can lead to sticky situations, and so the more formalized a club can be, elevated or otherwise, with very clearly how it happens, it helps. But at the same time, these kids are here volunteering their time, volunteering their bodies, and we want to make sure that they can feed themselves and take care of themselves and manage everything that they can off field, before they're being asked to perform on field, which is where the alternative scholarship probably differs from an athletic scholarship the most.
Yep. Okay, and the last one is need-based.
And I would say that one of the things here is if you've got a good rapport with your rugby coach and you've started to talk to them about that, many of them are really well dialed in to some of the merit scholarships, but the need-based financial aid that might be there within the school. The program Siena College sort of took a giant leap forward, partly because their director of rugby works in the admissions office, and it wasn't that he was getting them in as much, although he was. It's also that he could point to, hey, you've got this background, and you've got this major, you can get 25% off the top right there because of that major is in demand or something like that. So you've got to do your due diligence, but you'll also find on the Next Phase Rugby app that a lot of schools will be talking about these things. They might be talking about including work studies and grants and other things that they can help you with. There are some Catholic universities that will give a lot of money just to a kid from a Catholic school who has a GPA above a certain threshold. Bam, there's an immediate drop in the price of the tuition.
Yep.
Greg, we have a couple of questions, and Jack has put up two questions that are kind of the same, so I wanted to address them.
Yep.
You asked if Jackie, you asked if a parent or a kid should register, and then you had another question also there. I know it was there somewhere, but kind of the same sort of thing is
Yep.
really about reaching out and how do you connect with schools.
So
Go ahead with next page, the whole parent thing. And
yeah, so Jack, for as far as registering, both would register. So I mean, whoever does it, it's either one can actually go on and do the registration, but both of you will get a profile that will access your child's profile. You'll have access to it, is what I should say. So you'll have the same access. You'll be able to do the same searching as your child, and you see what comes in as far as requests for contact information, who's following, who you're following. You'll be able to do all of the searches just like your child can. And because of Safe Sports, we don't just keep your contact information out there. What has to happen first is the coach or the recruiter or whoever from the rugby program has to request contact information from you. So once that happens, an alert will go to the phone to the player as well as the parent, and then emails will also get sent to each saying so and so from this university is requesting contact information. You go into the app and hit accept or decline, and you hit accept, then you should be hearing from that rugby coach for recruiting.
The question about what level of college can help with admissions, there are some elevated clubs that are able to help with admissions. I mean, it can happen that way, and really that's just mostly tagging, pointing to players and saying, all things being equal, qualifying player, we really like it if this player got in. Most of that is certainly more with varsity or the non-varsity school-supported programs, much more common. Sam, am I wrong there? Is that?
For the most part, I would
Yeah.
say if someone is looking for direct help with admissions and things like that, the smaller the school, probably the more likely it will be. Let's take an Ohio State, for example, right? They have 60,000 undergrad. Their program, I think, has like 70 or 80 kids on it, which is a large squad. That's not a drop in a bucket. It's hardly a drop in the bucket in terms of tuition dollars coming in. Whereas you take a school that's small to medium size, let's say a 5,000 person school, a 50-person squad, that's a 1% of the bottom line. That's enough to put your thumb on the scale a little bit, right? One of the reasons why Linwood was able to explode so quickly is, one, Josh Macy is very, very good at what he does, but also he's able to produce the recruits, right? And success breeds success. But those early years, he had to go out and grind and get them in, and they're now a 13,000 person school. But I think between the two programs, he has 130, 150 kids. It's enough to make the school stand up and take notice. That's kind of the dirty secret about college admissions and higher education, is that yes, it's there to produce degrees. Yes, it's there to produce athletes and world leaders and leaders in their field, but it's also people in schools have to pay the bills as well.
Right. Question about rules. Are there rules when a player can contact coaches outside of the NCAA programs? And really, there aren't. And
No.
that, you mentioned, Sam, you said Wild West. There's definitely the Wild West there. There aren't, but the rules within Next Phase Rugby, as Greg pointed out, they have to request to contact you. And if you say no, the program has to leave you alone. And we have not received a single complaint, because none of these rugby coaches want to be thought of as pariahs and want to be thought of as nags. Once you say no, thank you, I'm going some other direction, they'll leave you alone.
Right. And if you're a premium member, you have access to all contact information for the universities and coaches, recruiters. So you can actually then just reach out to them at any time. There's no rule against that if it's non-NCAA. There are some very rare, I guess, instances where that's not true. Like Alex, we were sitting with somebody when we were down at Tropical, and because he's a small program, he's a varsity program. The women's team counterpart is NCAA. They're just putting a blanket NCAA ruling down on him as well. But that's very rare and few and far between.
And one other question, I will try to address all of them, but do joining programs sponsored by the likes of ERA, Rhinos, Free Jacks, things like that, do they have a better chance for scholarships or aid in college? And I would say that sometimes that's going to help you get in. And I would suggest, and again, Sam, jump in here, but if you are on a lesser known high school program or a team that does just not winning, things like that, and you're able to get on one of those programs, you're going to go tour with Eagle Impact Rugby Academy, for example, and then you get a really positive recommendation from the coaches there, that certainly is going to help you when your team is not winning a lot.
Yeah.
Sam, anything to add to that?
It certainly helps you get noticed on in a wider net, right? If you're a talented player playing in, well, I'm from the Midwest, so I'll say you're a talented player playing for a D2 team in the Midwest. You might be known regionally, but maybe you don't want to go to a school in the Midwest. Maybe you want to go Northeast, Southeast, one of the coast, Texas, whatever it may be. Getting onto one of the select side teams certainly helps because then it's not just you showing your talent, it's other coaches showing your talent, and then you're meeting players of high talent and high morals there who will vouch for you as well. And so it certainly helps you get noticed by coaches who might not see a D2 Indiana player.
Right. Another thing is that you also get some opportunities with a lot of these programs that you may be coached by some college coaches. Right, Sam, I know you do some select side coaching, so you get to see the kids firsthand. And the other thing is, with a lot of these teams, you're going to the big tournaments throughout the country where they are used as recruiting events. So there are definitely more college coaches at these tournaments, the NAI sevens or Tropical sevens or nationals, whatever it may be. And you're getting more eyes on you when you're on those teams. Let's see, what other ones can we?
But you want to go to the next slide on a couple of these are ones we can address in a minute, I think.
So finding the right fit. So love rugby.
Hi, look, you do love rugby, but there's more to the college experience than rugby. If you choose your college based only on rugby, but it's not the kind of town you want to be in, it doesn't offer everything you want in other student experiences, even the majors, things like that, or it's not right to position you for the career you want, you shouldn't go there. You shouldn't go there. You should be thinking school first. And Sam, you're nodding your head. Please jump in. But school first, right?
100%, right? So I could speak for a very long time about this. So before this, I was a public school teacher, and if the rugby thing didn't work out, I could always go back to that. I love the classroom, but the idea of setting up a young person for struggle. I'm not going to say failure because I don't think anybody's out there to do that, but to set them up for struggle in particular in that early adulthood just simply seems wrong to me. And so that's why I've said several times, and you've heard several times, coaches and players and parents on this call, is that you need to pick the program and the school that is best fit for the future, not just for 22 to 26 or 22 to 30. But anyone who's played sports knows, or pretty much anybody who's gotten a little bit older knows that A, weight comes on much easier. B, your shoulders, shoulders, knees, hips, all that start to ache. And you just can't play sports at a high level forever. So being able to, pick the school that's going to set you up for success, academically and professionally, is the most important thing. I said it once, I'll say it again. School is not cheap, so be there for a reason. A very small percentage of players will make it professional or make it will make it as an Eagle. Any able-bodied young person can work out enough to make their body international caliber. That is grit. That is grit and discipline, and then everything else kind of comes down to who you know, when you know them, and a little bit of luck of being seen. And so being able to pick that school where you're going to be happy, God forbid something happens where you have to sit out of competition for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, or heaven forbid a couple of years. You got to be someplace where you like the environment, you like the study, you like where you're studying, you like the city, because you simply will not succeed if you're not enthusiastic about where you are and what you're doing.
Yep. All right. Let's see, Alex. We have competition you're playing in. That's a big one.
Yeah. So we've talked about NCR and CRAA, and then the different divisions. So have a look at the competition. We tried to explain to you that there's a D1A, there's an NCR D1, there's a close, or for the women, there's the D1A level and the NIRA level, but then there's a Division 1, which is a little bit below, but still strong, still might be the right fit for you. And then Division 2, Division 3, and some of those Division 3 teams are school supported, things like that. So you have to have a look at not only what level they're in, but then go have a look at what conference they're in. Who's in the conference? Is that a robust conference? Are you in a conference with like 2 other teams, or are you in a conference with like 9 other teams? And how much travel is there going to be? Things like that. But also, the team you're joining, the school you're joining, their rugby team might be winning a lot. Is that necessarily what you need? It might be you just want to play really high competitive games. So if you're like Greg's kids, so Greg's son James at Mount St. Mary's in Rugby East, it's really hard to win rugby games in the Rugby East. So if you're a 500 team in the Rugby East, you're really good. But it's also high intensity, and that's something that James really wanted. So you have a look at that, and then have a look at not only who they're playing, have a look at last year's schedule or the year before. How many games are they playing? Are they really only playing like 5 games? Or are they playing 9 or 10 or even more? The teams in certain weather areas, they could play up to 15, something like that. And the final thing I'll say about this is be really vigilant about this. If you see a lot of scores for the team you're looking at that are the same, like 20-0 or 21-0 or 28-0, those are the most common ones. Those are forfeits. So if your team is winning 28-0 like 3 times in the year, that means they didn't actually probably play the game, or they played the game and it was, they had to loan players to somebody else, things like that. Be aware that not only do you need a strong rugby program to play for, but you also need strong rugby programs to play against.
Yeah. And just also be aware that just because they're in one division now doesn't mean that's what they're going to be next year. Teams move up and down. Teams go to different conferences. Teams even go to different governing bodies. So teams do move. And the other thing is you may have a new program, a varsity program starting D3 with a lot of resources from the school, and they have aspirations. They know by year 2 they want to be D2, and then year 3 they want to be D1. So there's a lot of different things to take into account, and those all come in. Actually, the next thing is asking questions when you're meeting with these people. What are their goals and those types of things. So yeah, when you get a chance to meet with a coach or administrator or recruiter, whoever it may be, if it's Zoom or in person, don't just answer their questions, because you want to make sure you're prepared with questions of your own, because you want to make sure it's a fit for you, just like they want to make sure you're a fit for them. You can ask the coach how long they've been at the school, what's their background. If you've seen they moved around a lot to a lot of different schools, maybe you want to know why this school in particular is the right fit for them. A good question is, how many sides do you have? Because not all. You want all of those sides to be able to play meaningful games on a regular basis. Some programs out there have their second side, their third side playing an entirely different competition or a totally different schedule than their first side. So this is going to, help you see, like, are you going to get a lot of playing time if you're not in that starting 23? So those are some important, things to ask of a coach. Or how many international players do they have in the roster? Do they actively recruit international players? Do they add a certain number per year? Parents also, you want to make sure you're asking a lot of questions. Do you have mandatory study halls or other academic, support systems? Do coaches have access to grades? So they get notified if a player is, struggling academically. Or what's the communication between, programs and parents? Because you want to know when your kid's playing, where they're playing, what side they're playing on. So you would like to know that communication, or, maybe sounds small, but, if you're not local, our game's live streamed, so you can watch from home. None of these questions are, maybe deal breakers, but it's nice knowing the answers to them before, you even step on campus. And then the next one is have an academic goal in mind. So do you know what you want to major in? If so, this should be one of your first filters when looking at a school. And you've heard it multiple times, academics should be first. And then your rugby search should, follow that path. So, you can even use the Next Phase platform to your advantage. You can actually search by major, so you can see what schools offer the major that you're interested in. And you know what? Maybe you just don't know. I'm not sure yet, and that's okay. You don't know what you're looking for just yet, but you also want to make sure the schools that you're considering, they offer enough academic options so that you're going to be able to explore and find the path that you choose. Again, bottom line is choose the school where you can succeed in the classroom first, and then rugby will just enhance the experience.
All right, we've got some questions. There's a bunch of questions. There's a lot of really good questions. This is a high question group this time.
It is.
Okay, Sam, you're going to like this one. Can you recommend any ID or showcase camps that coaches will be at this summer? They're currently going to Dartmouth and a Free Jacks ID camp as well. But Sam, does there happen to be a camp that University of Kentucky is running?
Okay. I'll speak to others, but shameless plug. Yeah. So
Yes.
Kentucky, we're running a camp, June 7th and 8th. It's going to be on campus. Every kid who leaves will receive a highlight reel that they can use for other recruiting purposes. Post camp, stay on campus, eat on campus, have that full Kentucky experience. I will not going to apologize. This is not a camp for the never have played type of kid. I want kids who come to the Kentucky camp to think, do I want to go here? Right. And have that full experience, full energy, running sessions, meeting players, things like that. So if you're interested in that, KentuckyRugby.org, and I'll leave it there. Now, when it comes to other showcases, different camps are going to have different purposes. For example, the Army camp, they have, I think, kids 13 to 18 there and several hundred. Yes, they'll pick out probably the top players to talk to, but it's really a revenue generation thing for them and for kids to have a good time. That's not to say that they're not going to get coaching. Kids who go there get very good coaching, but the purpose more so is for campers to have a good time, maybe leave with a new skill, but revenue generation. Dartmouth's camp is going to be very similar to mine. It's, do you want to be there? They have different hurdles because they're an Ivy League school, right? So it's going from there. But if you can get on to, or if your high school team wants to play any of the mini tournaments, whether it's next year applying for high school nationals, single school tier 2 or club tier 2, or get on to an NAI type of player, or any of the like MLR academy teams, Thunderbirds, Free Jacks, Independence, I forget what Utah's name is, whatever, Old Glory,
yeah.
all of those, they're all regionally based and they all get a play. And maybe you're going to be on the second, third team, maybe you're going to be team A option 1, right? But it's all things to add to your resume that look good on paper, then we can then it's coaches, it's our responsibility to dig in deeper and talk to those regional coaches to figure it out. So showcases always help. Full games on film are, I would say, the most useful.
And then just piggyback on that, I know ERA has ID camps throughout the country, and then you can get ID'd at these camps and then be invited to their winter camp out in Arizona, which is a very good camp held between Christmas and New Year too. So a lot of good stuff happens there.
And this question was from Connecticut, and keep an eye on Atlantis as well, which usually holds ID camps in Pennsylvania. It shouldn't be too far for you. Here's another one for you, Sam. Should the parent reach out to the coach, or should the student? Asked another way, is it bad for a parent to reach out first?
It is my preference that a player reaches out and the parent is on the email. And it could be sent from the kid's inbox, and it could be the parent who wrote it. But when it comes to college, people are stepping into their adulthood. Coaches, at least for me, would like to see some sort of initiative of this is what they want to do, and take ownership of that. It's not a bad thing, especially I would say that's for upperclassmen. If it's a freshman or sophomore, it's a very good thing for a parent to reach out, just because there's a different level of focus and a different level of responsibility with students so young. When they're spring of their junior year, these kids probably need to already be on it, and so them taking that leap of faith forward to reach out to the coach and having that two-way conversation, it shows that they want to engage.
And sort of related to that, Greg, I think this one's for you. What grade is ideal for setting up a profile on Next Phase Rugby?
Yeah, so you can set up a profile as early as 8th grade, and really for 8th, 9th, and getting into 10th grade, it's more so a free profile, just so you can get your name out there. Coaches can start following you, which is a big thing, because they may be interested in you, and that's when once they're following you, once you get into that sophomore junior year, and then you're go to premium and you're adding videos and game film, that type of thing, or reaching out to them directly, that's when the recruiting really starts to pick up. But you can get it as early as 8th or 9th grade, and just do a free one just to get the name out there and get colleges following you.
All right, a couple of questions that are somewhat related. Can a recruiter influence a child's admission into a competitive university? And can rugby coaches help a student get in-state tuition? In-state tuition, I think that's a program that often that's up to the rugby program. The rugby program has that agreement with the school. I've seen that happen where if you're a rugby recruit, you can be in-state tuition, or you can be in-state tuition after a year. And then influence admission, well, it really depends. That's get on that app and find out, because some can and some can't. I think that's the simplest answer.
It really varies per program on that one.
Are
there certain rules for international schools recruiting American athletes?
No.
No.
They do whatever they want, almost.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, really. We have some international schools on Next Phase. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still that same. They still have that same. They have to request contact information. You have to allow them to get that contact information. So there is still that barrier between.
Also, another question regarding being seen. We're heading to Montana with the Grizzlies Club. Told this is a showcase. Yes, absolutely. The Montana tournament. It's a select side invitational. That is a showcase. There are USA Rugby people who are at that tournament. So yes, that is a showcase. Is a good place to be seen. Once again, if you're not with that tournament, I don't believe they were live streaming it, but talk to your coach about, is this being filmed? Get film on those games. There's nothing they should be able to film that. And
is it okay?
Yeah.
Oops, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead with that one.
Is it okay for players to initiate contact to an NCAA coach before a junior year? It is not. You have to be a junior in order to. I mean, you can initiate contact, but they're not going to reply, or they'll just give you a very polite, generic reply like "Thanks for contacting us." But no, you need to be. Alex, you have to have finished your
Right.
sophomore year, correct?
We do have a webinar that's on the Next Phase Rugby YouTube page with NCAA coaches that talks about this, and they will basically give you a rather brusque but polite brush off and say we're happy to talk to you once you become a junior.
Yeah,
that's all they can really do.
What if there's a college you want to contact but it's not listed? St. Mary's, California. That's a good question. So not every school is on the Next Phase app. It is up to the school and up to the recruiters to be on the app. What I can say is, if you talk to them, say, hey, why aren't you on it? Because it doesn't cost them anything just to have a free profile on there, and then for schools to reach out to them. And there's some schools I think that are really doing extremely well recruiting through the app. And, I think it's really starting to benefit them, and they're getting access to some of the top players in the country before a lot of these bigger programs that just aren't on it.
There are over 450 schools on the Next Phase app.
Correct.
There are some that don't. I'll tell you this, St. Mary's doesn't do any recruiting. People just seem to show up. That's what they claim anyway. And a really nice answer to the question about when should I sign up for Next Phase. And another reader attendee here said that she signed up sophomore year. Said that was really good. It created the profile freshman year. Sophomore year would be best. So that's a great answer. Thank you.
Good.
A lot of schools now, like Georgetown and Boston College, are saying that they are not offering merit-based scholarships anymore. How would this affect financial incentives for their program? God, I don't know. I don't really believe them. A lot of schools now, like Georgetown and Boston College, are saying that they're not offering merit-based scholarships anymore. How would this affect financial incentives for their programs? Go ahead, Sam.
For those two programs in particular, it would not affect how the club is run at all. Both of those programs are either student funded, or I'm pretty sure Georgetown might have a little bit of alumni money, or Boston College is pretty much essentially fully funded by alumni. I don't know if they have a full-time coach yet, but the merit-based scholarship would not affect how their rugby program is run. It's one of the benefits or oddities, depending on how you look at it, being a club or elevated club, is that your money is not tied to the decisions of the school. So you have a little bit more autonomy with how those resources are spent and how they're dispersed, ideally with equity.
Okay.
All right. There's a little suggestion for you there.
Do colleges offer official visits? Oops, sorry.
No, I was looking at the one there. Graduation year. You might have to add 2030 on your graduation.
So 2030, they would be in 7th grade today. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So that it's 8th through 12th. So this summer to 2030 will be added for sure. Do colleges offer official visits? Yes, they do, and in various ways. I know some programs that they have the family down. They're on the sidelines for the game. The kids stays with some of the team this Saturday night. They go the whole 9 yards, and it really varies by school. Sam, I don't know how you guys do it at Kentucky when you have some player visits come in.
We try to do the whole 9 yards. I personally have walked the campus, I don't know, several hundred times at this point, but I go on every tour with every with every recruit, or I try very, very hard to have a sit down question, face-to-face question session, beyond just the video calls that we do beforehand. Have a whole tour, players lead the tour. I walk in the back with the parents. Recruits stay in the dorms with with the freshmen. They'll be there Friday night for a home game. They'll be on the sideline. I connected their parents, the recruits' parents, with parents on the sideline as well, so they can have a really good idea. And the whole point is for them to see, in a high stress environment, that is a game, what the club culture is, how players interact, how coaches interact, how parents interact, and I make no apologies for the culture that we've built, because I like the culture that's been built there. But deciding, is this a culture that they want to be a part of, and a school that they want to be a part of? And if it's not, that's okay. But it's a really good way for families, not just players, but families, to get a feel for the environment that they are going to be a part of for at least the next 4 years, maybe 6 if you're going to get a master's after.
Excellent. All right, next slide. So, yes, let's just finish up with first thanks to USA Youth and High School for allowing us to host the event. We are their exclusive recruiting partner. So we offer all USA Youth and High School members a $50 discount on our premium membership. The biggest advantage of a premium membership, that it's $150 after the discount, is that you can take your rugby recruiting journey into your own hands. So, as a premium member, you can post links to highlights, to game videos. You're able to see who's viewed your profile, who's following you. You're also listed as a featured athlete. So when colleges log on to the platform, they'll see you. Also gives you access to all of the contact information for all of the programs on the platform. And this is important, like Sam said. I mean, this means you can be proactive and reach out to them, because college coaches are really busy. They're in season, they're practicing, they're traveling for games. For many of them, it's not their only job. So if you're interested in a program, they would love to know about it and have you initiate contact. So as a premium member, you can do that. You don't have to Google search. You don't have to search school websites for contact information. It's all in the app. So, and if you want to upgrade, or if you want to join and upgrade, you just need to enter the code USAYHS, and it knocks $50 off of the price. So again, we're going to be posting this webinar to our YouTube channel, and we'll share that. We'll send it out in an email when it's up and available. And again, thank you for joining. Do we have any more questions before we log off here?
We have one more, which I think is kind of interesting, and it talks about geographic isolation. Here's somebody from South Florida in this case, trying to get kids to be seen, and it's difficult. And me, having lived in the Pacific Northwest, that's the same sort of thing. You're stuck up there, or maybe you're in northern New England. This is sometimes an issue. There are options for, if you're in South Florida. What I would suggest is, hold on, let me just make sure I get the URL right. I would contact the Panther Rugby Academy, pantherrugbyacademy.com. So they cover the South, and that would be the place where you could find a way to go play for them. There are select side tournaments that go on, and I realize it's not exactly on your doorstep. North Carolina Youth Rugby Union does play all-star games, and you could reach out to them and say, hey, look, I know I'm not from North Carolina, but I don't have a team. Maybe the Jaguares are not playing right now. Those sorts of options are there, but certainly you can get game film and get yourself on the app and put your film out there and let people see that. Yeah, I think we need to work a little bit harder to get some camp information out there. I know I do.
Yeah.
So.
That's a good idea. And then another thing is one of the largest.
Go, Sam.
Alternatively, for Florida, right? If your school, your players are down there, I'm sure you guys aren't the only program who feels that way. I guarantee that if you put on a showcase in South Florida in February, coaches would come down to it.
Yeah.
Right. If you get organized with the rest of the teams, within a couple hours of you, I mean, let's say the coach from Wisconsin would probably be pretty happy to be, to be in South Florida in February. Right. It's just using, yes, it takes a little bit more organization, but if we can put it on the calendar, then we can budget for it and and fly down. I know, for me personally, like Lexington has very direct flights to Florida, and I would love to be there in late January, early February.
That sounds like a plan. All right.
Yeah, and I think we can help probably organize that too, with Next Phase. And then don't forget, you have one of the biggest recruiting tournaments, in your state. I know it's not in South Florida, but up in Tampa every April is one of the largest sevens tournaments in the country, and a lot of recruiting going on there. So you can enter your local team into the club division, or get onto an all-star team and enter into the elite division.
And that tournament, Tropical Sevens, even if you can get on a Tropical Sevens team, because they have a Tropical Sevens team. If you can't find a team to be on, they will put you on their own team.
Absolutely. Let me just double check. I think that's it. Yep. So thank you again. This is my email address. I know probably everyone got it during the registration process, but if you have any questions after this, greg@nextphaserugby.com. Alex, Sam, thank you very much for joining. Really appreciate it. That was great. And thank you all again for joining. Everyone have a good night.
Goodbye. Thank you. Thanks, Sam.